Oh, hi there, and welcome to my 10.1.7 Retribution Paladin guide. Cleanse our enemies in a holy fire! Let's get into it. Now, currently there are two different builds of Retribution Paladin. You can go for the Crusading Strikes, which is the auto-attack based, or you can go for the Templar Strikes, which is a more involved playstyle. This also have an influence on which stats you want to look for. For Crusading Strikes, you want to focus on haste as much as possible, and then followed by verse, which is almost equal to crit as your third stat. Mastery is something you don't really want to go for as Crusading Strikes Paladin. For the Templar Strikes build, you want to focus on versatility and then crit, which is roughly equal to haste as your third stat. Once again, mastery is something you don't really want to go for. I have a lot currently, however, I've also been gearing primarily as protection. So let's go over the talents. As always, I will link all of the talent builds down below in the description. In our class tree, there are quite a few very good damage nodes. However, a lot of our class tree is actually our survivability and utility that we can bring to any situation. For damage nodes that we are looking for, we will always start with Hammer of Wrath. This is an execute and it generates holy power. Then we take Greater Judgment to gain 20% increased on our next holy power ability. Then we have Justification to gain 10% increased judgment damage. We also pick up Avenging Wrath as our main cooldown. There's also Holy Aegis, which is just a slight armor and crit strike chance increase. We also pick up Seal of Might to gain 4% mastery and 4% strength, as well as Seal of Alacrity, giving us 4% haste and reducing the cooldown of our judgment. And we also pick up Seal of the Crusader to give our auto attacks an additional holy damage element. We also pick up Vengeful Wrath to give our Execute or Hammer of Wrath to be always a crit. We also pick up Divine Toll, which is great for both AoE and single target. It deals a nice amount of damage and just fires off judgments for 15 seconds. We also pick up Divine Resonance so we can continuously have judgment throughout our cooldown. Last 2 points is of Dusk and Dawn, so that whenever we cast 3 holy power generating abilities, we gain Blessing of Dawn to increase the damage of our next spender by 20%. Whenever we consume this effect, we then get some survivability, which is then further increased by Seal of Order. As a paladin, you also pick up your 4 auras. Concentration Aura reduces the amount of interrupt and silence effects on our party, while Devotion Aura reduces the damage we take. Crusader Aura increases the mounted speed by 20%, and Retribution Aura makes it so that if anyone takes a large hit, every member gain 5% increased damage and healing, which will then decrease over 30 seconds. This can be hugely beneficial if it happens during a burst window. Defensively, paladins are great after their rework. You have Lay on Hands. We also pick up Devotion Aura if you're the only paladin. This might come in handy. We also have Obduracy, which reduces the damage we take from area of effect attacks and also gives us a slight movement speed increase. We of course have our Interrupt. We gain 4% armor. We gain 20% increased armor, 10% increased stamina, and 10% damage reduction from AoE. We also have Light Forged Blessing so that our Divine Storm heals us and 4 additional allies based on our max HP. We also pick up Crusader's Reprieve, which increases the range of our Crusader Strike, auto attacks, and our Interrupt by 3 yards, and our Crusader Strike heals us. This will then be our auto attacks with Crusading Strikes build. We also pick up Healing Hands so that our Word of Glory healing is increased based on missing health, and that the cooldown of Lay on Hands is reduced by up to 60% based on missing health as well. We also pick up Unbreakable Spirit, reducing the cooldown of Divine Shield, Shield of Vengeance, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by 30%. Now, in certain situations, you will also pick up Blessing of Protection, which makes someone immune to physical damage. This leads us into our utility and mobility package. The biggest issue paladins have is the same as DKs. You are very mobile. However, we gain Divine Steed, a 6-second doubling our movement speed. We get 2 charges of this, as well as having it increased in duration. We also pick up Blessing of Sacrifice, which makes it so we can shield someone for 30% of the damage they take, while we suffer that damage. However, this will not let us fall below 20% HP. Some other notable utility points that you are able to pick up is Cleanse Toxins, Blinding Light, reducing the cooldown of Blessing of Sacrifice, and of course Blessing of Protection. We can also pick up Fist of Justice to reduce the cooldown of our single target stun whenever we spend spend any of our holy power. Now with the reworked Paladin spec tree, we are actually very lucky as a Paladin because we have multiple ways we can build our spec tree depending on each situation. As you can see on the right, I have basically two versions of every build. I have the Crusading Strikes version and the Templar Strikes version. For the rotation showcase, I will only be showing the Crusading Strikes build as that seems to be the most popular, and also it's the one with the least amount going on, so you can just focus on doing mechanics and deal max damage. Before we go into specific talent points, the first thing we have to discuss is the difference between the Crusading Strikes build and the Templar Strikes build. Overall, there's not a huge amount that's going to change. It's mostly whether or not you pick up like Heart of the Crusader rather than having the increased auto attack speed from Zealot's Fervor. As you can see here, simply swapping Zealot's Fervor to Heart of the Crusader and swapping Templar Strikes is the only thing we're actually swapping between our single target Crusading Strikes and Templar Strikes build. Now, some of the things that you always will be picking up is Wake of Ashes. Wake of Ashes is our Legion artifact weapon ability. Slightly bit nerfed from back then, however it feels great and it slots right into your rotation, makes it work wonderfully. This also makes it so that Wake of Ashes have a burn effect over time and as well as doing additional damage to our main target. Now the other thing is that you will always go down the left side if you're going into single target, while the right side of the tree focus way more on damage over time effects. Our radiant damage, which is holy and fire damage, and makes it so that our AoE damage effects are stronger overall. Now, some other talents you will always be picking up is Guided Prayer, which is basically like a cheat death, where if you're brought low, you're instantly healing yourself for Word of Glory, which is basically a full heal, or you can go into Flash of Light, which makes it instant, heal more, and have a slight cooldown. You also always pick up Shield of Vengeance, since this is an absorb shield. However, once it expires, or if it's burst due to taking damage, it will deal that amount of damage as wholly to everyone around you. For both builds, you will also pick up Consecrated Blade, which makes it so that Blade of Justice casts Consecration for us, which means that that's something we no longer have to think about in our rotation. Currently, you always pick up Avenging Wrath, as this reduces our 2-minute cooldown into a 1-minute cooldown, and also increases our crit chance by 20%. This is then combined with the base cooldown of Avenging Wrath. Other points in our spec tree is basically just ways to make us generate more holy power to be sending into Final Verdict in single target and Divine Storm in AoE. However, for Retribution Paladin, you can quite easily go into a Cleave version of your single target, where you lose Vanguard of Justice and Divine Wrath to pick up Inquisitor's Ire, which makes our Divine Storm gain a stacking damage increase, which we can then just use in single target, or if there are adds up during a fight, or consistent cleave. We also pick up Blessed Champion, which makes our Crusader Strike, auto attacks in this case, and our Judgment hit 2 additional targets, but of course deal slightly less damage. This is great for fights like Mythic Forgotten Experiments, because you have 2 targets primarily that you will be cleaving on throughout 60% of the fight. You can also go more into your AoE, which is something like Assault of Disakali, where you go into your Searing Light combination and you will swap over to using Final Reckoning over Execution Sentence. Execution Sentence is great in single target because you're basically building up for 12 seconds for one massive hit that you will then deliver. Final Reckoning, basically just a large amount of damage on a 1-minute cooldown in an area, and also debuffing all enemies so that they take 30% increased damage from your holy power spending abilities. This works great in AoE situations, in raiding. For M+ specifically, you don't actually swap away in your spec tree from your AoE build. However, you do pick up some niche utility, like I mentioned earlier, Cleanse Toxins and Blinding Light, as well as Blessing of Protection. Before we go into the rotation, let's talk about the core of Retribution Paladin. You're a builder spender. In single target, your main spender will be Final Verdict, while in AoE it will be Divine Storm. And basically, you just want to make sure that you can fire off your Final Verdicts or your spenders while you have a Judgment window up, and also making sure that you're able to never overcap on any of your holy power. So you just need to know, like, Judgment generates 2 holy power, Blade of Justice generates 1 holy power, and Wake of Ashes generate 3 holy power. Then you have Divine Toll on a 1-minute cooldown, which also generates a lot of holy power due to Judgment. And that during your execute, you gain access to an additional holy power generator. Crusading Strikes works a little bit differently than most other passive auto attack versions, like the Demon Hunter's Demon's Bite, which generates fury on every hit. Crusading Strikes generate holy power on every second attack. However, you cannot benefit from Wind Fury with this talent, quite important to note. So outside of our cooldowns, if you're below 2 holy power, you want to make sure that you use Wake of Ashes. Then if you have execute, you you execute, and now that you're in max, you Templar's Verdict. Judgment, Templar's Verdict. Execute. Blade of Justice into a Templar's Verdict. It's all about building up and never wasting your resources, and then try to fit in as many finishers or Templar's Verdict as you're able to. That's the general flow of Retribution Paladin. It's built up to 4 in this case, and then Templar's Verdicting as much as possible. You want to use your Executioner Sentence on cooldown while you have resources, so that you can quickly try to pump in as many finishers into your Executioner Sentence. So the general idea is just using your things on cooldown, like Avenging Wrath, Execution Sentence, Divine Toll, Wake of Ashes, while just getting as many final verdicts into your target as you can. That's actually your general single target priority. Luckily for both Crusading Strikes and Templar Strikes, the opener will stay the exact same. You will follow a strict 10 button ability rotation before you go into your regular priority in single target or whatever situation you're in, where you will just try to get as many finishes in as you can. So let's do our opener. You want to run in with Judgment, Blade of Justice, Execution Sentence, Avenging Wrath, Hammer of Wrath, Templar's Verdict, Wake of Ashes, Hammer of Wrath, Templar's Verdict, Divine Toll, Templar's Verdict, and now we're just back to our base rotation where we want to get in as many Templar's Verdict as we can. This of course means that we want to get as many powered up Templar's Verdict as we can with Judgment. And then of course if you have any trinket procs or you have other ways of triggering your Crusading Strikes, you will of course do those. But that's actually your opener burst. It's not that difficult once you get into it. Now the AoE version of your Crusading Strikes build is very similar to your pure single target. However, you will just replace your final verdict with Divine Storm. The general consensus is that you want to use Divine Storm on 3 or more targets, unless you have stuff like Tempest of the Lightbringer or the Inquisition's Ire, where you would want to use it in 2 target situations. If there is a single target focus, you want to focus down that with Verdict. This is also true if you're running Divine Arbiter or if you're running Empyrean's Legacy, so that you will use final verdicts when you have those buffs. Other than that, it's quite similar. You want to just use Final Reckoning when you have your holy powers so that you can burst into that 16-second window as much as possible. So your AoE priority would look Avenging Wrath. I would then use my Hammer of Wrath to generate holy power. Then Final Verdict, Divine Storm, Wake of Ashes, Divine Storm, Divine Toll, Divine Storm, Hammer of Wrath, Divine Storm, Blade of Justice, Divine Storm, Hammer of Wrath, Divine Storm, and just finish off with as many Divine Storms as you can. Basically, as you get more into the flow of playing Retribution Paladin with Crusading Strikes, you will naturally learn when you will actually gain the additional holy power from your auto attacks. So once you get into that, there will be some mastery over when you use the different abilities, because sometimes it might be worth waiting for an additional holy power rather than spending some time waiting for an stability and thereby overcapping a holy power, which is going to be a DPS decrease. Now, while the Crusading Strikes build is currently the most popular, I will always prefer the Templar Strikes version, simply because it gives me more agency over using my abilities correctly rather than having it be based off an auto attack proc. This also makes it so that I'm in control of when I'm getting the holy power and not based on my auto attacks. Now it's important to note that during this Templar Strikes combo, you always want to make sure that you finish your combo rather than losing it. Other than that, it functions in the exact same way and the priority will be similar to your Crusading Strikes build. It's just a different method of gaining your holy power. Now, just because I prefer this playstyle, you might prefer the other one. Feel free to toy around with them. I think that's all I have to say about Ret Paladin. It's extremely fun. Kind of simple for my taste, but hey, it suits some people, right? And as long as you have fun, that's all that matters. Hopefully you'll subscribe and see you in the next one. Bye!